The function of leadership is to produce more leaders, not more followers. Welcome to the Paid Forward Society, where we believe that leadership is a continuous learning journey and where knowledge is passed on to the next generation of leaders. I'm Roman Jordan. I've been learning and practicing management of global teams for about 10 years. In this podcast, we will explore the many facets of leadership as we talk to inspiring managers, entrepreneurs, coaches, veterans, and athletes who empower their teams and deliver results. Together, we will discover the keys to success through empathy, purpose, and care. So join me as we embark on this journey to become better leaders and create a better world. And we are live. Okay, so now we are recording, Mark. Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm excellent, thank you. It's a great pleasure to join you today, and it's fantastic to see you after all this time.
True. Yeah, I think we didn't meet in probably 8 or 9 years. Actually,
no, it's staggering how fast time goes past.
Yeah. So thank you for answering my invitation and being there and being ready to talk about leadership. I'm super excited about that. So it's a special interview for me because you have been the one giving me my chance as a manager. So that's I might be emotional. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see about that. But
yeah. Well, I'm thrilled that I was able to. It's dear to my heart, leadership, and seeing people develop to achieve more than they ever thought they could do themselves. So it's a great pleasure and an honour to see people doing better and see their careers develop. It's if I was part of that in any small way, that was it's always a great pleasure. But I'm sure I, like many leaders, were just a stepping stone in people's careers.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. So I think there are many topics I would like to discuss with you today. So as I told you during the briefing, I intend to have to take the time to have conversations so we can dive deep into some of the topics because this is an opportunity for everyone here to know more about leadership and understand how people are doing things, and that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah,
so I think what I know about you is that you have more than 30 years of experience in the industry, 20 years leading pre-sales activities and being in different VP level type of roles, so vice president type of roles. And you have recently retired from the corporate world, and now you are a coach. So that's great.
Yeah. So I'm very lucky and fortunate to have been able to have a great career in IT, and it's given myself and my wife many benefits. And one of those benefits now is the ability to step out of the fast lane and the stress of corporate life and use this 30 years of experience to now share that with other people. And if I can coach people along the way, that's it's my passion in a way, if you like. So it's a great pleasure.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. I think there are different topics I would like to address with you. First of all, your own path as a manager leader. I know that many people and people that are new to leadership, but also more experienced people are struggling with hiring. So I would like to get your insights on that, how you invest in others and help them grow, how you scale through others as well, which is quite difficult actually, and something that you need to learn. I know from my experience working with you that you were really passionate about change management and how to drive change.
Yeah.
So that's another topic I would like to address. We are in 2023, early 2023, and there's a lot going on on the market, and specifically in the tech industry, with many rounds of layoff. So talking about RIF and your experience managing those would be
Yep.
very
the
useful.
tough side of leadership and management, if you like.
Yeah. And finally, I would love to discuss about your coaching activity and what we can get out of coaching. Why is that something that a leader should embrace? So that's basically the agenda for today. If that works for you. And why don't we start with your introduction? Can you introduce yourself, Mark?
I certainly can. Yeah. Well, Mark Seager. I'm a techie at heart, I suppose. I was lucky to be introduced to IT at school when the UK government invested in computers at school, and it was like a light bulb for me. For somebody that wasn't particularly motivated at school, computers really lit my candle. So I'm a computer scientist by education. Spent some time doing software development for a number of firms. Did really interesting real-time development for at the time our GEC Avionics, which won a contract to do fly-by-wire for Boeing aircraft. Actually, way back when fly-by-wire was all new, and we did real-time ADA programming, machine level coding. So really interesting stuff. That I think gave me a massive grounding in IT, in actual fact, because I was lucky enough to really code when coding was low level stuff. So the benefit I think I got from that was it doesn't really matter what the tech topic is in IT. I have a very quick grasp of probably the fundamentals of how things work. And that stood me in stead throughout all my career in a way. I was then lucky enough to, I did a little stint working for a bank, a Japanese bank in London, running their open systems functions when TIBCO was new to the market. So message bus architectures was all very new, and traders were using it to get very fast instrument data and merge that together. So that was a great experience because I was on the other side of the table, if you like. I was a consumer of IT and working for a bank. So it gave me experience of actually consumption of technology. And it also gave me a great insight to cultural differences because I worked for a Japanese organization, which was a real massive eye-opener. And we can come on to that maybe later about cultural development. Ultimately, I didn't really enjoy being on that side of the desk. I actually preferred to be on the supplier side and developing technology and using it. I then had a very fortunate step into pre-sales from being a consumer of technology and seeing pre-sales people come and try and sell to me and salespeople sell to me. I had the opportunity to go into pre-sales for what was then a company called OpenVision that turned into Veritas, that turned into Symantec.
Okay.
And in that journey, I started off as a pre-sales consultant, became a first-line manager, became a country manager, became a VP of EMEA, and that is my growth, if you like, in all those years in that journey. On that journey, I was very lucky to go through many changes as the company evolved. You can imagine with those companies, the mergers that they went through. We did a lot of tuck-in technology acquisitions along the way. There was, when Veritas and Symantec merged, they were two completely different cultures. And a huge difference in the way in which they went to market, the sales culture, the personalities, everything couldn't be more different. So that gave me a great experience to do culture change. It also gave me access. I was lucky enough to have access to an external coach during those years, and really understand the benefit of having somebody external. We can talk about that in more detail. And it also it really made me aware that was what my passion was leadership and development of people and teams, and technology. And I love pre-sales as well. If you're a technician and you like the cut and thrust of the sales as well, and the competition and new technology, I just found my home really in pre-sales and leadership of pre-sales, and I had a lifelong career in it really, and no real necessary desire to move on to anything else. It just gave me the reward that I wanted, and there's a certain sort of breed of individual, I think, that goes into pre-sales that makes it a success. It's also it's a bit of a tangent this, but it's a slightly unique role in IT as well, because there's no other role in a sales-focused IT organization that covers so many spectrums of the company. Because if you're in pre-sales, obviously you've got sales acumen. That's a really important thing. You've got to have technical acumen as well, because that fundamentally is your bedrock skill.
Yeah.
But you also have to have consultancy skills. You have to have support skills. You interact with every function in the company you work for, from engineering, product management, marketing, support, consultancy, even finance, because you if you're really good at your job, you get involved in contracts and things of that nature as well, in terms of creating a business plan for your customer. That you touch more functions in a company than any other role that exists in an organization, and that makes it unique and very exciting.
It is, and tough.
It is tough, absolutely. It is very tough, and it's very stressful. It's very demanding. In a good, healthy sales organization, the pre-sales people are highly respected. They have to work hard to earn it and maintain it, but it is a tough role. But on the other hand, sometimes pre-sales people forget that the sales role is actually it's a very hard and demanding role, and most pre-sales people don't want to make that final step into actually owning and taking the ownership and responsibility of a number.
I think, given the option, I feel that sometimes the sales is so account managers are demonstrating a very strong ownership, and in my experience, they have also they are leveraging or using pre-sales to their convenience. But I've seen the best teams that I've seen, they were true partnership. That's true.
Yeah.
As in, the pre-sales was strong enough to be a great partner to the account manager. You need to have this level of ownership as well as a pre-sale and backbone also, to push back on account managers who are driving by numbers sometimes more than by customer satisfaction. And that's the tension that sometimes I've seen also between the two functions.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. But I over the years, if you think of the bell curve of performance, you've got a lot of people in that middle ground, both pre-sales and salespeople, who are successful. But if you look at that top end, that's where you need to focus people and try and motivate people that's where you need to get. And when you get a partnership between pre-sales and sales at that top end, then you really understand the differences in the roles, and you understand a good account manager makes things happen in an account. They take ownership, responsibility, and they work in partnership with the pre-sales. But the pre-sales also take ownership in that account as well, and make things happen in their part of the account as well. It's and you know how many pre-sales people do you ever see get fired for not hitting the number at the end of the quarter? It's quite rare.
Sure.
Whereas, you know, an account manager misses his number 3 or 4 quarters in a row, is likely to be out.
Yes.
And we should never forget that in pre-sales, that's the hard reality of sales. And there is a lot of people in that middle of the bell curve that milk it and get away
Mm-hmm.
with it for a long, long time. But the really successful salespeople, it's a different world, and they really make things happen. And they're the ones you want to work with.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was lucky enough to work with some of those, and yeah, indeed they're really great. One name that I don't know whether you remember, but it was Freddie Aman, was
Yeah, yeah.
amazing and still a great performer after all those years. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. And you see it all the time. You see great account managers. People think they're lucky, but they're not. They work hard, and they're
yeah.
repeatedly lucky.
Oh yeah.
The more, it's the old adage, you know, what is it? The more I practice, the luckier I get.
Yeah.
And it's true, you know. And also when you look at the careers of a lot of account managers that are in the middle of that bell curve, you look at they've changed role every 2 years, sort of thing, and you can tell that that's somebody that is mediocre. Anyway, we shouldn't get into the realms of account.
Yeah, yeah. That was a good introduction. Thank you, Mark. And if that's okay with you, I would like to start with your journey as a leader, because you said that specifically at Veritas, Symantec, you came in as an individual contributor, then a first-line manager, then moving up the chain to country manager and VP. So that's a great career already. So tell me more about that. How did it go?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not one to. I think I've got natural leadership abilities in. If I think back to my university years and various exercises we did there, I naturally managed to get people to follow, and I can inspire people.
Yeah.
Even if I think of as an individual contributor, and we'll talk about this more, I'm a passionate believer that leadership is not about hierarchical authority.
Yeah.
You know, everyone is a leader at some point, sometimes more than others. If you're in pre-sales, you are absolutely a leader. Everybody is a leader in pre-sales. So I was lucky to be successful as a pre-sales engineer or consultant, whatever we want to call them, and managed to demonstrate capability and leadership in that. And when the opportunity came up to become a manager of a small team, it was almost a natural progression that I was selected to do that. And
can you tell me more about what you just said? I mean, what were those leadership abilities that you were demonstrating?
I'm not going to necessarily say what I was demonstrating, because I don't know that that's right. But what I would say is that for me, people that demonstrate natural leadership, there's a common thread for me, and people that I'm always inspired by and given the chance to promote, I will do. And they have a common attributes. And the first thing I think is they have a passion for what they're doing. You know, if you've got a passion for what you do, it's infectious.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're just an individual contributor as a pre-sales consultant, when you go and talk to a customer, if you're passionate about your technology, it has more impact on that customer than any feature that you've got in your product.
Totally. I fully agree with that. Actually, we had a very similar discussion with Amanda Spencer in the first episode. I met her at Riverbed. Actually, she was an SE, and then she became SE manager in Australia. And the first thing that she's looking into candidates and people in her team is the passion, and how motivated they are to deliver the job and deliver on behalf of customers. So
absolutely.
I'm fully aligned with that.
And when you look at leadership, you know, if you look at the spectrum of leadership, in some respects, you can teach people leadership skills. But the difference between just being a leader and a mediocre leader versus a great leader comes down to some things that I'm not sure you can teach people. Passion is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
The other one I would say is, and you could argue that they're very similar, but enthusiasm. I think there is a difference between passion and enthusiasm.
So what would that be?
Well, I think you can be passionate about something without necessarily demonstrating the enthusiasm for it and the energy and drive for that, for what you've got a passion for. Enthusiasm in a way is the thing that is the infectious thing. I can be passionate about playing music, but if I don't demonstrate that enthusiasm for it, then nobody necessarily knows I've got that passion for it.
Okay. So is passion more inward, inbound, and enthusiasm is the outbound side of things?
I think so. But the two do need to go hand in hand if you're really going to inspire people to follow you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the other element that matters a lot to me when it comes to leadership is compassion for others.
Perfect.
You can't, you can be a leader, a dictatorial style leader, and you will get results from people. You get results through driving discipline and rigor.
Mm-hmm.
You could argue there's a lot of that about the way the army performs is very much discipline. Now, in its extreme form, you drive discipline through fear. And there are leaders that you can see around the world that achieve results in that way. I wouldn't say the army drives discipline through fear necessarily. I think it drives a lot of belief in people through discipline. But when you can drive behavior through compassion, I think you get much, much more out of people. And if you can lead people where they are motivated, you will get that much more. You get 80% out of people with discipline, but you want to get 100+%. Then you've got to do it through motivation. They have got to be motivated for it. And I think compassion for people is a very big element of that. People have got to believe that you care about them.
Yeah.
It can't be false. You can't fake compassion for somebody. And compassion doesn't necessarily mean you're soft and you let people walk over you and you give in to them all the time, because in actual fact, people don't respect you if you do that. So, respect comes from various things, and compassion for people and discipline and structure and all of these sorts of things matter very much to you. So I think these are the things that I think you see as out of people natural leaders. And I'm not necessarily saying that I don't like to suggest whether I've got or haven't got, but they're the things that I see in people that make them the difference between individuals and leaders. And that's why I say I think it's so important that people as individual contributors recognize they are leaders. And particularly in our world, or my world of pre-sales, you often find there are specialist roles in pre-sales, or there are umbrella roles in pre-sales. And they are difficult roles to perform, and they can be really hard to be successful in. And you often find that you get people put into those roles because they're technically brilliant at that piece of technology, but they can fail dreadfully in that role because they don't have the enthusiasm, the passion, and the compassion for others to be successful. And that's what makes them successful as leaders. And by compassion, there's all sorts of elements that fall into that compassion. The desire to see other people do well, the desire to help people learn, desire to support people. You can. I've had people that worked before me before where they're brilliant people, but they have this sort of knowledge is power element about them, where they're not. If I share what I know, you're going to be as good as me, and I don't. I want to. My own insecurity stops me wanting to share that, because when I know something you don't, then I'm obviously secure. And it's not necessarily I know something you don't, therefore I'm better than you, but it gives somebody that level of security. Now, if you've got somebody that is compassionate and passionate about other people, then they have a desire to share that.
True.
And they recognize that that's their knowledge isn't, them being more knowledgeable than you isn't the difference. They actually understand that the thing that makes them different is their ability to help other people along the way.
I totally agree. Have you read Simon Sinek or those books? The books of Simon Sinek's book. Simon Sinek is a author, and
I've not read them.
Okay,
we'll come on to that. I'm not a big reader of all sorts of different theories and practice.
So what I really I'm more interested in learning about how people are doing things. But what I like about Simon Sinek and the way is talking about leadership is that he's talking through stories that he has studied and is in touch with different leaders in the army and in the enterprise world, the corporate world, and so on. So for me, he's one of my gurus, I have to say, and what he's saying is completely aligned with what you were saying about compassion. The fact that people will give their sweat and tears if they feel safe, if they feel that you care for them and you are here for them as a leader, and that have inspired me a lot because when I became a manager, I had some intuitions, but I was lacking the framework. I was lacking, where should I put my priority on, and learning through books like this. So like Leaders Eat Last from Simon Sinek, and others like Turn the Ship Around is a great book. This one is a great book. Have you read this one?
Yeah.
This one is awesome. So I've tried to use those tools to get into my job as a manager. So so that was that. And one of the things that the SEALs in the US are doing is that they have this magic quadrant of trust and performance. And basically that gives you 4 quadrants, where on the top right you have high trust, high performance, and then you have low trust, low performance, and so on. And what I found super interesting, and I faced that in my career, is that you don't want people that are high performer with low trust, and because those people are toxic, and I've been super transparent with that about that with my team, because I don't. I want people to be able to learn, to exchange, to help others grow. And as you said earlier, you don't want someone that, or you are looking into someone that they can help others grow, and they don't keep their knowledge for themselves, and they help the organization grow as a whole. And I think that's super important as a leader.
Yeah, and trust is an interesting topic in actual fact, and a very important topic. And again, even in dictatorial style leaders, they do create trust in the structure and the organization. Some of the very topical at the moment, if you like, you've got through the propaganda that Putin puts out within Russia, he's created enormous trust for himself because he controls the narrative so much. So you can create trust in that way. But that's not the way, the Western world and democracies and industry works. Trust, and this is where I suppose the difference becomes when you're talking about leadership as an individual contributor and leadership as a manager. trust is a very important thing, and how you create that is quite an interesting topic. And for me, demonstrating that you are there to support your people is a critical element of trust.
True.
People that are in your organization have to believe you've got their interests at heart, and you are there to support them, defend them, protect them, get them what they need in order to be successful in their jobs. And it reminds me of, I'm not sure whether I ever did it for you, but I do, of this very, very trivial diagram for all my new managers when I talk to them about the role.
Mm-hmm.
And in the center of the diagram, I draw this little stick man. So that's you as a manager.
Okay.
And I draw an arrow up and say, this is your number one priority, is delivering against your objectives. And in pre-sales, that's a very easy thing to identify because it's a revenue number. We're here to deliver a number. But it doesn't matter what your role is as a leader. You should fairly easily be able to identify what your number one goal is, whatever that is. And I say that's your number one priority. That's your responsibility. Your number two priority, I draw as an arrow down and point down into your team. And the objective of that is to create an environment in which your people can be successful. That's your job as a leader and a manager of your people. And as part of that is about, creating the trust of those people, getting them what they need, giving them top cover, protecting them, motivating them, etc. And it sometimes creates an interesting debate as to, well, shouldn't that be number one?
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't your people be number one? And this is where my career in sales and the DNA of sales comes over in me. And at the end of the day, we're all here to deliver a business objective. However, you can create a very harmonious team and everybody loves working for you and everybody's happy, but you don't deliver anything. So, you're going to fail. And we all have to remember that at the end of the day, we're here to deliver a business goal and a business objective. So I do always argue the other way around, that the number one objective is to deliver a number. You've got to deliver that number. And in order to do that, you build a team who are motivated, enthusiastic, trust you, etc. But it is that way round. And one of the topics you talk about, and we'll come on to, about riffing, etc., that is a very hard, stark reminder that you're in a business and there's results that we've got to deliver.
Yeah, I think that's a constant tension that managers have to deal with. I mean, and specifically, I want to be a people first manager. And I think the best way for me to do it is to make sure that the business is healthy, because otherwise there won't be any more job for them.
No.
And I think I've learned that from a podcast, a recent podcast I listened. I like the way they did it. Our priority is to deliver on the business so that people have a job, and then you can make the condition for that job to be great and to be passionate, and where people will be able to deliver the best and have also a lot of joy in what they do. But first of all, you need to make sure that you are going to deliver on the business.
Absolutely.
And I fully agree with that.
And I think a lot of managers sometimes forget that. And lose sight sometimes and defend their people. I wouldn't say inappropriately, but they defend their people with emotion rather than fact. If you go into battle for pay rise or head count or whatever it may be, a lot of less mature managers or leaders will talk about, everybody's overworked, they're stressed, etc. And that's all very, very true, but that's not going to get you investment. You need to back it up with some business metrics to support your argument. Because yes, everybody will be empathetic to the fact that everybody's working hard, but it's not going to, your shareholders and the share price isn't going to change by people being more happy, as it were. And just to close the loop on my little stick man, by the way, in that there's the up and down. There's a third dimension as well, which is horizontal. And the horizontal dimension is cross-functional effectiveness. As a manager or a leader, you have to be effective at working across the organization. And you'll often find managers will say, "Oh, I don't want anything to do with politics. I don't like politics. Not going to get involved in politics." Well, I'm afraid it's
it's part of the job.
Smell the coffee, wake up and smell it. It's part of the job, absolutely. And if you want to build an environment for your people to be successful, then you've got to get involved in that horizontal element of the job, and you've got to learn how to do that. And it's a shame it's referred to as politics, because politics has a bad name, but that's why I like to refer to it as cross-functional effectiveness. And one of the coaching modules I have with people is all about your influence map internally.
That's great.
I actually get people to sit down and build their influence map. Who have you got relationships with? And in the world of pre-sales, it's so important, because as we said earlier,
totally.
Who's the product manager that you need to work with? Who's your support counterpart that you need to work with? Do you have trusted relationships with these people? So that cross-functional effectiveness in the world of pre-sales is absolutely critical, but it's critical in any leadership management role.
Totally.
You have. Totally. And the exercise of just sitting down and drawing it makes you realize. And then you get into the realms of, maybe you call it politics, but I don't think so. Go and build a relationship with these people. In the world of our world, where you've got sales kickoff and things like that, if you know what your influence map is, go and make sure you use these events as an opportunity to build a relationship with somebody. It's amazing what you can achieve when you've actually got a face-to-face relationship with somebody, and you've got some rapport and some understanding, some empathy with their side of the fence and their role. Then you can actually achieve so much more.
I couldn't agree more. Actually, I have 2 cases of managers reporting to me in my experience where they over-indexed on taking care of their teams, because that was important to me, clearly, and they missed the understanding the cross-functional effectiveness politics, as you said. The fact that you need to build. You are representing your team externally and internally, and you need to build those relationships and understand the dynamics and facilitate some of the conversations and make sure that you are not isolated, because you are not. Actually, you should not be isolated. Otherwise, you would run your own business, right?
Yeah.
But you are part of a big corporation or smaller, but you are part of a system. So you need to interact with everyone, and you need to build those relationships, those partnerships. They are more than relationships; they are really partnerships. I have 2 examples in mind where maybe as a leader I missed the opportunity to coach them on that, or to remind them quite enough on the importance of building that, because yes, they were taking care of their team. Yes, they were delivering on the business, but ultimately they were not great leaders, because they were. And I loved your. So you didn't teach me that, as you didn't. I didn't get that from you, but now I have it, and I will use it definitely, because I think that's a great tool.
It's so simple.
Yeah, it's so simple indeed, and I had a conversation recently with another manager. We were discussing about the fact that you need to manage up and how important it is, and it's not about bragging, or it's not about it's just because you need to do it. That's the way things work.
Absolutely. And you look at many pre-sales people in particular who are really successful in their accounts. They're the ones that can have some of the strongest relationships with engineering, and they go about, and the quality of that relationship is based on, as you say, it's mutual trust and respect between them. And if there's one criticism I guess I would have for pre-sales people, and this won't sit well with a lot, is we tend to be emotional.
Yes.
And all too often when you hear conversations in that cross-functional world where it's starting to go wrong, the conversation is emotional. It's like when you engage with support or you engage with engineering. It's, I've got to have this feature because the customer needs it. I'm not going to win this deal if I don't get it, etc. That's all very interesting, but it's not going to get a feature enhancement put into a product. You have to build rationale and justification and a case for it. And those SEs that are really successful look at what the customer's need is, and if it's appropriate for the product, they'll go and argue the case, and they'll build a scenario-based requirement for it and justify the alteration. Alternatively, they'll go and work with the customer to understand how they can move the customer in a direction that is more sensible. So I think that would be my one thing I would always give to pre-sales, is you got to learn when emotion is appropriate and when it isn't. And if you're trying to be cross-functionally effective, emotion is, generally speaking, a very quick way to get the door closed in your face.
Yeah, I think in my experience, people are, as you said, developing this empathy with the other party is super important, because people don't realize that product managers, for example, they experience the same discussions with every other SEs who are, and it's not about being the most vocal and say, oh, my big customer here is going to we are going to lose them because we don't have that feature, because that's not how it works. But sometimes it's the case, but it's not great. And I have the same discussion actually with developer advocates, which is kind of a similar role. I mean, no, I can't say that because people will be mad at me, but there are a lot of similarities with solution architects, solution engineer and pre-sales, but the scale is a bit different. And you need to come with data. That's the thing. That's the only thing that will drive a meaningful business discussion with the other party.
Yep, absolutely. You're spot on. And you mentioned there about understanding having empathy for the other person. I think one area there where it's really important is support. When in our world, very often pre-sales get caught up in support cases because we're a point of escalation when things are going bad.
Sure.
And very often things are going bad because communication has broken down. That's 90% of the time, that's what's really happened when things are going bad. And putting yourself in somebody else's shoes in support and the challenge they have in dealing with sometimes is very, very important. I can, a little tip for some people that are dealing with, send a bottle of something to somebody, your support contact and partner that's on the front line. And I tell you, it can make a world of difference, because those guys never get praised for what they do. They're always dealing with trouble. That's their job. They only ever engage with somebody when they get in trouble. So it's giving some praise to the folks that sit on those frontline phones.
I totally agree with that. I mean, they don't get to go to the President's Club, for example. That's the thing. So for the audience, the President's Club is this. How would you qualify that, the President's Club? It's an interesting concept.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's different views on that. President's Club is something that the world of sales has got very used to.
Yeah.
And I think this is where you start to see the slight DNA differences between salespeople and pre-salespeople. Salespeople are hugely motivated by the status and visible success that President's Club gives. Pre-sales people love to be rewarded and recognized, and the accolade of it is really important. So I think it is a big motivator of people. It's a difficult one for pre-sales in the way in which pre-sales people are driven and led. There's a very strong element about pre-sales about working as a team. I've always, in all of the companies I've worked for, I've always maintained that you can never have enough knowledge as a pre-sales consultant. You just don't know enough. That you have to know so much about your own technology. If you work for a company that's got a portfolio, that's a challenge in its own right, knowing everything about your own portfolio.
Oh yeah.
And then, of course, what you tend to be selling integrates with the customer's IT landscape. So they've got technology that you have to know about as well. So the ability to know everything is impossible. And if you do, my God, wow, how valuable are you? So, working as a team is so critical. And that's where things like President's Club can be difficult, because President's Club is an individual reward.
Yes.
And it's
so just to define it. So President's Club is basically a week of holidays offered by the company in a very nice place like, the Caribbean or Hawaii or other places where people will hang up and hang out and do parties and be with the top execs of the company, so you can develop that relationship. That's why it's President's Club, right? Is it fair?
It is fair, absolutely. And for most people, if you look at society as a whole, outside of the world of IT, the sort of holiday we're talking about would be, a holiday of a lifetime style holiday. It's luxury. Everything is laid on for you. Nothing is too much. It's for you and your partner. And it's a great reward. And it's for the top achievers in the sales organization. These are people that have usually blown their number away significantly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a motivator for sales, and it works very effectively. And it's always very, very highly sought after.
Clearly. So I think we've discussed a bit. I mean,
yes.
Let's go back to your journey as a leader. So, first line manager. How was your first experience as a manager? How was it?
For me, it was good. And I do think making the step into management in pre-sales generally is quite a comfortable way to do it, because the community you're working with is very team orientated. They're very motivated about joint success. So it's a nice environment to step into management. What you're not ready for, though, is possibly the level of responsibility and accountability that you've got when you step into that role. And I can remember one of the strongest lessons I ever learned that sticks with me and always will about management, if you like. Yeah, it's more management than leadership. One of my team members these are the days when we used to take software into customers on discs. I'm going back now to the point where it was a transition from floppies to CDs in actual fact. Nice. So anyway, we took our software into one of our customers. Unbeknown to us, the software, that disc had a virus on it.
Oof.
And we took it into the customer. We didn't know we'd done so initially. We had a very successful day with the customer. I think on the second day, it came to light that the virus had come into the organization. But not only this was a financial organization, by the way.
Wow.
not only had it gone into their Q&A department, but it had traversed into their production environment as well, and it brought down their online banking system.
Whoa.
So it was a very serious situation that one of my consultants had innocently done. Obviously, there was no malice about it. And I can remember being at home when this news broke, and I can remember walking up and down my lounge, just swearing to myself, knowing how serious this was, and having really no idea what I did about it. And the lesson that I learned from it is I picked the phone up to a manager, a seasoned leader and manager that I worked with. Actually, I'll give a call out to him, Dave Wimpenny, who sadly has passed away now, but he was a support engineer, head of support at Semantic back in the day. And he taught me a great lesson. And he said, look, mistakes happen. Everybody has mistakes. There's nobody on the planet that doesn't understand that mistakes happen. The real secret is what you do about it when you have a mistake.
Yeah. So what do you do about it?
You pick the phone up to the CTO.
Okay.
And you take it on the chin, and you acknowledge. In my case, my approach to this was we acknowledge that it was our responsibility. We brought it in, and you articulate what you're going to do to rectify and prevent the situation from happening again. But the critical thing for me, the lesson was, mistakes have happened, and people understand mistakes happen. It's about what you do when those mistakes happen, and we maintained and continue to maintain a very healthy relationship with that organization, and continue to go on and do business with that organization. We were lucky that we had a good relationship, and I was able to. I already had a relationship with the CTO as it happened, so I was lucky in that regard that we knew each other and we'd met each other. But irrespective of that, I mean, in my career after that, over the years, once you get to a senior level in pre-sales, you spend a lot of your time dealing with customer escalations, and picking the phone up to somebody and handling that situation is in my opinion, is a critical role. And it's part of building the trust with your team as well, is that you are going to step up to the plate when something goes wrong, and it will go wrong. In that instance, that was something we should have been able to prevent. That should never have happened. But we are going back a long way in the world of viruses.
Yeah. But I would like to. So, how do you make a safe environment for your team when those things happen? Because sometimes. And that's a natural behavior I've seen, specifically in sales. You need someone to blame, and sometimes people, specifically pre-sales, because they have a big ownership and they will feel really bad about the situation. They have a hard time overcome that. So how do you deal with that?
Well, I'm just pondering your statement there. You need somebody to blame. I'm not sure you do need somebody to blame. I guess.
I mean, you don't need, but that's a common behavior.
Somebody's got to take responsibility.
Yes.
And ultimately, my view was it's my responsibility. It's not. If I thought that the SE in question had done it maliciously, that'd be a different matter altogether. But even if that were the case, I would still have to be the person that phoned up the customer and said, "Look, we've done this." If one of my team makes a mistake, it's my responsibility to take the ownership of that.
Makes sense.
You can't throw somebody under the bus for that. And I think there's a lot of managers that do that.
Yes.
And they don't have trust of their people. They never will. If you feel, topical person, for example, would be Donald Trump. He does it all the time to people around him. You look at the people that have been in his inner circle, that when things aren't going the way he wants, he fires them and he passes the blame onto those people. if you'll never build trust with your people if you've got a culture of doing that. They have to feel that they can make mistakes safely in your environment, and it's you never learn anything with success. You learn much more with
Yes.
much more. So if you want to get the best out of a high performing team, they have to feel that they can make mistakes in your environment, and you're going to be there to protect them. Obviously, there are there's again in the army, if you shoot somebody by mistake, that's the consequences are far greater, and the
mistakes are different.
Yeah, they are. But in the world of IT and pre-sales, you got to manage. You've got to manage the situation. Now you can have pre-sales people that make stupid mistakes, and you've got to deal with that. I mean, that's all about performance management, career development, and all those good things that we should talk about. But ultimately, the way you build trust with your team is you've got to step up to the plate. If something goes wrong in your organization, you've got to recognize that it's yours. It's yours to handle and deal with. And that was my role.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I like that.
You do the same with, I've been on installations or that have gone wrong. We're doing a POC with customers that isn't going well. And I've pitched up with my SE at that POC to give them some top cover and to talk with the management that is there and try and protect them from the stress that they're under while they get on with the job. Now, the reality is, in 9 times out of 10, I can't add any value to that individual that's doing the job. They know the product and the environment far better than I do. But if I can protect them a bit and help the customer understand this is a POC, it's a joint exercise that we're under. You need to invest energy into this as much as we are, all those sorts of things, and give them cover. Then, that's where you start to build the trust. You're in the trenches with your troops. And I don't care in some respects how senior somebody is. Even as a VP, when I had over 300 people reporting to me, I would still get involved in end user situations where I've got an SE that needs some help. And that, I think, is the difference.
I just want to go back to POC. So that's a proof of concept.
Absolutely.
That's the tool that's the period where you test the solution within the customer environment, so they can validate that it's what they want.
Absolutely.
Just wanted to explain the context for the non-pre-sales.
Yeah, I know. Dreadful habit in IT of all 3-letter acronyms for everything that we talk about. Yeah.
That's correct. Good. Okay, thank you for that. How do you get to the next level of being a director or country manager?
Well, I think you have to prove that's where the proof of your role comes into play. And that's where I think, unfortunately, within IT, and I guess probably management generally, people get promoted for being a good individual contributor and they're thrown into the role. And very sadly, there's actually very little development given to first line managers. Very few companies have even quality coaching, whether it be an internal person that's coaching somebody in the skill of management, let alone some elements of formal development of managers.
True.
You kind of end up learning on the job as you're going. Now, having been there for a long time, what I try and do for people that I coach now, which is I spend a lot of my time coaching first and director level, and actually I've got a couple of VPs as well that I work with. One of the things that I believe, there's a number of tenets that I believe are very important as a leader or as a manager. The first thing I would always argue for people is you need a plan. There's all sorts of different names that are given to it. Some people call it a victory plan. For me, it's a simple mission and vision and goals. You got to build that plan out for yourself. What is it you're here to deliver? What are the things that matter? And you can break that down into, it doesn't matter what role you've got, what sort of company you work for. There's some basic elements that are in that plan. What's the business goals? What are the business objectives that you've got? What are your customers? How are you going to measure customer success? Who are your partners? Now, you might not have partners, but it's quite rare that you don't have some form of partner, even if it's an internal partner somewhere in the line. And then there's your people. What's your people plan? And we can go in.
What do you mean by that? Is it growth plan? Is it?
It's the whole career spectrum of your people. How do you recruit them? How do you hire them? How do you enable them? How do you onboard them? How do you retain them? How do you develop them? How do you measure them? It's what I always used to refer to as the people development plan.
Okay.
Which is the whole evolution of an individual right the way through your organization. And I've always maintained, if I can help somebody in their career, even if they leave me, because the reality is we have to recognize people want to develop their career, and you can't always give them the next role.
Yeah.
But you can help. To me, if I can help them on that journey, then I'm going to get more out of them while they're with me. And hopefully I'm going to prolong the time that they're with me. And if I can help them get onto their next role, then that's great. It's just as successful. But I'd love them to do it with me. But yeah. So you've got business, customer, partner, people, and then internal stakeholders. And you should have a business plan that has got those elements in it. And there's got that sort of vision for those elements should be in your business plan. And when the people I coach now, I encourage them to have what I refer to as a living document. Usually it's just a PowerPoint presentation that has got, what is your mission? What is it that can you create a strap line or a mission that you can articulate to people as to what your team is here to deliver? And often I would encourage people to do that with their team, with their stakeholders, and work out what is our joint mission. Because if you do it with your stakeholders, then you get people's buy-in to that. Sure. And we touched on, this is going to amble all over the place, but we touched on culture change. If you want to drive culture change, having a vision and mission is really, really important. And the more people you can involve in that, then you can help to build what is the culture you want to develop in your organization.
Agree.
And then people have got a vested motivation in that plan.
Yeah. I think what I like about, so I'm working with Amazon and I think we have a strong writing culture. And what I like about that is that it gives much more details and an opportunity for people to get it right. Because I think slides are, you can interpret them in a way or in a different way, and sometimes the message is lost. So I think writing down a doc where people can comment on and give feedback on, I think that's the way we work at Amazon, and I find that super, super useful to build those relationships. So, for example, we have been working on a 3 years plan with my peers, and we are using that as a tool to create partnerships with other teams, because and we are getting feedback, and then we update the document, and we are getting feedback, and so going back to your living document where you need to things will change because the business is not a straight line. It's going to
absolutely.
so you need to adapt. You need to have this existential flexibility.
Absolutely. And that's why I say, whatever the vehicle that you're using that you feel is appropriate for you, whatever it is, have a living document.
Yeah.
And the advantage of that as well is that if you've got a living document that's at your fingertips, whenever you get the opportunity to stand in front of somebody else that you're influencing, you've got something that you can work with, you can reference, you can tell your story to other people. You're always ready to respond to what your organization is here to do. And if you've got a living document, you keep adding stuff into it, success stories and things that you've achieved or things that the team are doing. You've just added into your living document so that you're always ready to react and respond, so that nothing surprises you if you've got a living document that is your business plan. And it doesn't have to be huge, it doesn't have to be massively long, but there's enough in it that gives you the opportunity to communicate your story to whoever you need to get that story across to. And as a business leader, in my world, or our world in pre-sales and sales, you're always going to have to do quarterly business reviews. You should always, even within, again, as a pre-sales manager, you should be doing a quarterly business review of your team and your people. Even if you're not asked to do it by sales, you should be doing it for your organization. But if you are asked to do it by sales, if you've got a living document that's got all these elements in it, you're ready, instantly ready to respond to. And that living document can have key successes, troubled accounts, support escalations, product. You build it so that you've always got it ready. You've got a business plan that is covering everything that you need. And that in itself is a big topic. So that's my number one thing when I help new managers. Get yourself a plan and a living document, and it will evolve over time as you learn more. Doesn't have to be sophisticated to start with, but you start to develop that. And you start to give yourself the mental agility to think about, what is it that we're here to do? What are the business objectives that we're here to do? Leading on from that, my second thing that I encourage people that I believe is very, very important. I'm a massive believer of the phrase, inspect what you expect.
Yeah, I like that. I was going to tell you that. Inspect what you expect.
You have to understand what it is you're here to. And if you go back to my simple analogy, my stick man in the middle, where you've got your number one objective is to deliver an outcome. Think about what those outcomes are and put them into some form of metrics that you can use to measure the success of your organization. And you're not necessarily doing this as a stick to beat people. You're doing it as a way of promoting the success your organization is having. And if you go back to my slight irritation with pre-sales about we're all so emotional, and I'm guilty of this massively myself, if you've got metrics that you can use to measure the success of your organization, if in the world of pre-sales we argue, look, we're maxed out, there's no time for anything. Well, if you've got some metrics to support that, now you can go back to the organization and say, if you want to grow the number by 10%, we need to grow pre-sales, or we need to do X, Y, and Z, because you've got some metrics. But it also allows you to know the performance of your organization. And that, again, is an important thing. And you can recognize, reward people. You can use it either up the chain or down the chain in your own organization to show how people are performing and doing. Performance is a critical thing. We sometimes don't like to analyze it, but the reality is we need to. And actually it comes on to I'll skip for it. My next point that I think is very important is you, the individual. I'm a big believer of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Now, you talk about books that you read, etc. And I'm not a massive fan of all the different books, but there's one document that I came across from Harvard Business School that talked about what makes a great leader. And it's an article about emotional intelligence. And it really struck a chord with me in terms of what makes great leaders. And there's two elements of emotional intelligence that I think are cornerstones that are so important. The first one is know and understand yourself. And for that, I'm a fan of Myers-Briggs, if people are familiar. And I'm a Myers-Briggs practitioner as a result of my enthusiasm and interest in it. And it's just one of many tools, and you'll get a lot of criticism of all these sorts of tools. And some of the criticism may well be valid. I don't necessarily care what the tool is that you choose to use. The objective of it is get a better understanding of yourself. What makes you tick? What causes you stress? What causes you? How do you react to different things? Are you a detailed person? You're a big thinker, etc. understand yourself, because if you understand yourself, you can then move on to the second cornerstone of emotional intelligence, which is self-regulation.
Yes. Yeah.
You need to be able to control how you react. And this, again, sort of plays back to my frustration of pre-sales being too emotional. Understand yourself. You are so much more impactful if you do that. So you as an individual is a big element about stepping forward into management. And we can go into those in a moment. So let me.
That's super important, because in last episode with Chris Solwood, we were discussing that, where basically she did not understand that others would feel the same way than she does, and she was not in the. She was trying to build a relationship with a peer, and that would not work, because she was so enthusiastic, and that she would give the mic to him to give him the place, but he was not the type of people that would enjoy that at all.
Yeah.
And I think to your point about Myers-Briggs and understanding you and how you behave, and then try to understand others as well, will help you develop this empathy and those relationships.
Yep. And if you become good at understanding the principles of whatever it is, Myers-Briggs, anything, and understanding yourself, it's very powerful in the roles that pre-sales or sales, etc. If you can start to look at an individual you're talking to and you can actually understand them. A simple example would be, there's a great difference between people that are detailed orientated, and people that are blue sky thinkers. You go into a blue sky person and you talk about the speeds and feeds and functions of your product, you're going to lose them. They're not going to be interested. But if you talk about the innovation and the direction the company's taking and other people that have done it with you, and how you can transform their business with your technology, they're going to be interested.
Yes.
But the same's true as to how, one of my other points here, I'll step forwards. Communication is another big topic that I spend time with people on. Communication for me is almost the key to leadership. How you communicate with people is so important. And if you think about communication at a very high level, we do it in everything that we're doing. Our body language, our facial expressions, our emotion, it's all part of communication. And how you communicate, and you set a message, and you give a story, you set the direction, it's all part of communication. And if you can have an understanding of who you're talking to, you can communicate to them so much more impactfully. So if you know you're talking to a detailed person, give them details. If you know you're talking to a blue sky people, don't give them details. So how you communicate is so critical to, and that's a big topic, but it's an important topic for leadership. If you can't communicate effectively as a leader, you will struggle.
I agree with that. I think this is still a growth area for me, communication, and specifically communicate to influence other leaders, which is a big topic for me that I need to work on. What are some of the techniques or ways to learn and to become better at it?
Oh, great question. Well, somebody once told me 7 times in 7 ways is the mantra for communication. You've got to keep at it.
Okay.
And it's interesting you talk about Amazon doing written. You're into written. That wouldn't work for me because I'm dyslexic, and reading takes a lot of energy and takes a lot of time. I'm a very slow reader. So if all your communication is in written, I'm going to struggle with it. Okay. So you need to find multiple ways to communicate with people.
True.
And the more no, that's not fair. The bigger the audience you're talking to, the more you have to think about the different styles that you need in your communication. Yeah. Because you will have people in that audience that are big blue sky thinkers, and there'll be people that are detailed. So if you're trying to sell somebody a vision as to where you're going, the old rah, we're going to be $50 billion organization in 5 years' time. Yeah. For big blue sky people, if you give them a little bit of element of, we're going to develop technology that's going to give people rocket boosters and everybody's going to fly around the world in environmentally friendly, nonsense, whatever it may be, you'll motivate certain people.
Mm-hmm.
Or leave behind the people that think that's absolutely ridiculous. There's no way we can go from 100,000 revenue now to 50 billion in 5 years. You've got to give those people the steps along the way, plan. So your messaging and you've got to tell stories that hit all the different styles of people's input, and the same with how you take in information. Some people will be written word is brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a very visual person, so I need graphs and pictures. I can take on a graph very, very fast. Other people are very number orientated. You can give somebody a spreadsheet and they can see a theme in that spreadsheet of the numbers immediately. Well, that's why I want to convert it into a graph. So when you're trying to get a message across to somebody, you've got to try and look at what style of information they want. And I don't think there's anything wrong in actually having an open conversation with you when you're talking about cross-functional effectiveness, or talking or providing information for your manager. Sitting down and talking about what style of information do you want? How do you want that information? Some people very often will just want the executive summary. That's all they need, and they're brilliant with that. Other people they'll skip over that and go into the numbers and say, your numbers don't add up. There's a flaw in your plan. It just doesn't work. So you kind of got to try and understand what it is that people want and how they want to receive that information. And then also there's an element of trust in there as well, because I'm a detail person. But when I've got trust with somebody, I'll read the executive summary, and if it makes sense to me, then I'm okay.
Okay.
But if you don't have that trust, and because I'm a detail person, we're going off into tangents here for a moment. Because I'm a detail person, it creates a perception of no trust in people. Because I want the detail, people feel that I don't trust them. But it's my style that makes me want that detail, so that I'm comfortable and I understand, okay, now I can piece this together. I can see how this is going to work. It doesn't mean that I don't trust you. It means that that's the style of material that I need.
I agree with that. I mean, and I am the same as you, I think. And I had a situation where someone, a direct report of mine, told me, I don't like your micromanagement. How you manage me? I said, no, just trying to understand what's going on. And I'm not trying to micromanage. I just need that to understand where we are.
Yeah.
What's the level of the business? And it's not like I don't trust you. It's just, it's how I operate.
Yeah,
basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, account reviews is a classic example of this.
Oh, yeah.
When you're reviewing an account, I always want to understand, where are we with the sales process? Where are we in the evolution of the deal, etc. And I want somebody to give me that level of information, so I can build up an appreciation and understanding of how likely we are to win this thing and when we're likely to win this thing. And then I can address the business element of my role that says, look, I've got a joint responsibility in forecasting.
Mm-hmm.
In that, my role is, when you've got a good relationship with your sales counterpart, and I had a brilliant relationship with one particular sales leader. Well, actually, most of my sales leaders, in actual fact, sales leaders like that triangulation that you get between customer's view, account manager's view, and pre-sales view. So understanding where we are on opportunities from a pre-sales point of view can add enormous value to a sales organization,
Totally.
really understanding what their forecast is. So having that level of detail and understanding, but you've got to help your audience understand that. I want that detail so that I can present our view of the business to sales.
Back, yeah.
So if you can make sure you're keeping me abreast of where we are, I'm not micromanaging you. I'm giving you top cover by understanding where we are with the business. If you don't think this deal is going to close and we're forecasting this deal to close this quarter, I can help you with that. And I can take the pressure that the account manager is giving you off you by actually being able to put a business representation on that deal.
I like that.
The sales leader is going to recognize, we're being told by the people that are doing the proof of concept that they are not ready to invest or to purchase the hardware or whatever it may be until next quarter. And yet we're forecasting to close this. There's a mismatch there. Now, it may be that mismatch is actually okay. But if you bring it to people's attention and you say, look, this is a red flag.
Yeah, I think
we're not ready to close this deal.
I had so many interesting discussions about that, specifically when I was in sales, and that's brilliant. So I want to go back to communications and something that you raised earlier, cultural differences or cultural, because I feel that obviously I'm French. I worked in Switzerland for 10 years, so that was a different culture altogether. I worked with a lot of Germans, very different as well. Yeah. And now I've been in the US for more than 5 years now. And the way we communicate here is very different from in Europe. So how do you deal with that? Because obviously your managers were most likely based in the US as a VP for EMEA, for US-based companies. So you need to adapt. So I get the detail-oriented versus blue sky thinking, but there's also the cultural, background that is thrown into the mix.
Absolutely.
So how do you deal with that?
You respect the differences fundamentally. And again, back to my EQ comment, having an understanding for cultural differences. If you want to be highly impactful in a multicultural organization, you must have an understanding of those cultural differences. And it's important for you as a leader to help coach your team as well. Some cultures have a very abrupt, blunt style of communication.
Yeah.
And that can be very offensive to cultures who are much more socially orientated. Even to the degree of where you top and tail your email. There are some cultures that don't even have an introduction, hi Mark, or best regards Mark, or whatever it may be. It's literally straight into the point. I've seen emails to support people that simply start with, what are you doing about case XYZ? And, for some cultures of similar culture, that probably is no problem at all. This doesn't appear offensive at all. Whereas for other cultures, chances are that email is going to go to the bottom of the day's list of responses.
Most likely, yes.
You're going to think to yourself, well, I'm not doing anything about it. I've got 10 other things to do at the moment, and yours can wait. So it's, as you become, your role takes on cross-cultural environment, you've got to educate yourself on the differences in the cultures. And that's not necessarily easy to do, but I think as long as you're open and receptive to learning about other people, and again, it's back to EQ, you've got to take that on board, that people have different approaches, and your role, if you want to get a message across to somebody, it's your responsibility to change the way in which you message that. It's not the recipient's responsibility to understand what you're saying. It's your responsibility. It's a little bit like, if you're going to speak to a Japanese person and you're just going to talk to them in English, they ain't going to get the point of your message. and therefore, who's the loser? It's not the Japanese person, it's you. So you've got to change the way in which you decide to communicate with that person and find a common platform for that person. And if you're not conscious of that, then you've got a low EQ, and it's going to hold you back, particularly on cultural things. And sort of the way in which we communicate is the extreme of that, but the daily aspect of that, particularly, I mentioned earlier about the merger between Veritas and Semantic and the cultural differences there. Then you get into the realms of your belief system and your value system and your goal system. Then you've got to start to understand, if you want to merge two organizations together, you've got to start to look at, okay, what are the differences? What's motivating these people in a different way? What's their value system that they're working to and the value system you're working to? Because if you expect them just to change because you say this is the way we're going to go, then a good number of them are going to vote with their feet. And that's not what you want. You're losing talent out of the door. So you've got to be willing to embrace the differences in the culture that you're dealing with. Otherwise, you're only going to be so effective. And the only way you're going to do that is spend time and learn it. Go out. I was always a big believer. If I visited a country for whatever reason, visiting a customer or whatever it may be, an internal meeting, I'd always make a point of staying and having a dinner with my team or a dinner with the customer or whatever it was. And that's a great shame about COVID, in actual fact, is we're working in a different landscape now. But I would always make a point of getting out with people and getting away from the office and starting to learn a little bit about them. And that's when you learn about the culture of the country as well. You get to see people and what they like doing and that. And then you start to invest in understanding people. And that, I think, winds us right back to sort of the beginning about the compassion for other people. If you care about other people, you're going to invest in trying to understand how to communicate with them, how to be effective. And so communication is such a multifaceted thing in a way. Even two people from the same country with the same culture will take on information in different ways.
Totally. Yeah, totally. So going back to my question, how do you become better at it? I mean, practicing is what you said, but what are some other tools to adapt? I mean, getting to know yourself is what you said also. So how you operate, so you can develop this empathy towards others because they may operate differently.
Yeah, I think the number one thing is open your mind to the awareness of differences with people, and then learn about communication, learn about the different. You've got verbal, non-verbal, visual, non-visual elements of communication that you've got to start to think about and take on board, and try and make sure that you're conscious of the impact of those communication styles, and there's such a huge added dimension when you're talking about different regional cultural language and different regional cultures that come into that as to what the body language might mean for different locations. So it on the one hand, it's a really interesting topic, and becoming self-aware and self-disciplined is, to me, the most important thing about it. But it's also a minefield of opportunity to screw up. In particularly, written form. Email is a very dangerous. It's a minefield, and of course now we're into a whole different world.
Slack,
of WhatsApp,
even worse.
Slack, and everything. Which is, I have seen WhatsApp in its worst forms, and social media for me in the workplace is a dangerous thing, because we blur the line between work communication and social communication, and the ability to offend and upset somebody is just huge.
I agree with that.
So the written form is a very dangerous. You have to be even more conscious of how you're writing something when you're communicating in the written form. because it can be so easily misinterpreted. Just one word out of place, and of course, if you're not communicating in your mother tongue, then it's even more dangerous. So,
True.
Pick the phone up.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think another piece of advice that I found in the book, the book was Writing Without Bullshit, and there are a few things that were good. One of them is the core, what they call the high run statement, I think, is the fact that you need to treat the time of the recipient as the most important thing, because I've seen many cases, and it's not only written, but where people are talking at you.
Yep.
But the communication is not effective at all because
Absolutely.
it's not.
Yeah, there's a whole aspect of effective communication. I mean, a great example I always give people is, you ask somebody for direction somewhere, and you'll get somebody to say, "Ah, yeah, I know what that is. Go up this road, go past the garage on the right. It's a Shell garage, I believe. Actually, it's one of the cheapest garages in the region to get petrol. I don't tend to use it because I go to the supermarket and get it. But anyway, go past the garage on your right. You'll get to a roundabout. Now, when you get to that roundabout, on the far side, there's a McDonald's on your far right side. So that's the roundabout you're at. You want to go left at that roundabout. Then go down there. There's a crossroads, and there's a great pub on that corner of that crossroads. I go there. The beer's great. The atmosphere's lovely. Anyway, go straight over that crossroads, and then you get to another roundabout where at that roundabout there is a petrol station there, but the petrol is expensive there, so don't bother filling
I think we get the point.
and you've no idea where you're going.
No, I'm lost
completely. You often find that people communicate in a way, and there's so much noise around.
Oh yeah.
And again, pre-sales are classic at this. You want to.
Oh yeah.
You want to encourage product management to take on a feature. Succinct to the point. Get in, get out, move on. Don't give them all the noise that goes around the outside and all the baggage that you've got with it. And that is a great communication failure for a lot of people. Your example is a great one. Consider the time of the person as the most expensive thing, and if they want more information, they'll ask you for it.
Yeah, totally. So I think we have discussed a lot already. So we are 90 minutes in, and I want to be respectful of your time, but there are some other topics I would like to discuss with you. Specifically, how you invest in others and help them grow as a manager. I think we got a good sense of your career path and how you step up. And how you scale through others. I think that's the other element I would like to discuss. And that's and why was I a good candidate? I want to understand.
Well, I think I've already told you in some ways, in a way. I mean, your passion, enthusiasm, and compassion for others is infectious. That's it, and they're giving you the opportunity to use those skills in a leadership role. It was just guaranteed to be a success. If you create the environment where somebody can be successful and support them to do it, if they've got those foundations, as I said earlier, you can give people a lot of skills around leadership and management, because there's a great amount of grayness for me between management and leadership. And in a way, a lot that we talk about leadership is actually basic management activities. Leadership, in a way, for me, is almost just inspiring others to follow you. If you can do that, then you can be taught the tools to actually be a leader. And you had in spades the ability to inspire others to follow you. And if you got that, and I think that's what I was lucky enough that others saw in me. My manager at the time invested a lot and saw that capability. So I think that's the key thing there. That's why you were going to be a natural to grow into being effective.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
In terms of, you talk about developing others, I talked briefly about, my pillars of what I approach people on now. People development, or people, is a big area of your role as a leader and a manager of your team. And for me, that's a critical part, and it's a big part of the role, because if you think about it, you've got recruiting is the start of that process. And a lot of people, when they do recruiting, they haven't done the basics in actually, okay, what's the job spec? Do you have a job spec? Do you understand what the roles and responsibilities are going to be? And do you believe in that job spec, or has it been given to you by somebody, as HR producer? And it's a generic copy, So you've got to start from that point of view as to what is the job. And if you do a thorough job on that, that helps you with the full spectrum of the career somebody's going to have with you in their career with you, because that job spec should cover what are the business objectives of the role, what are the soft skills, what are the technical skills that this person needs to have, and therefore once you've got that, then you've got the foundation for your whole people development, people support path that you've got. So people dismiss job specs all too freely and think that it's just an HR-y sort of admin-y type thing, but it isn't. It's the foundation of everything that you do with your people.
I agree.
And from that, you can then start to understand what are the skills that somebody needs, both from a soft skills point of view. You can start to break that down and understand, business development skills, cross-functional communication skills, all the soft skills. And then, of course, the technical skills are generally easy to do because that's a product list and
understanding of
technologies, etc. But you should have it. You should have that skills map drawn out for somebody. And then from that, you should have a development plan. Everybody should have a development plan, even if there's nothing on it. There should be a conversation with somebody about their development and what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I flippantly, if you like, say even if there's nothing on it, I look at myself and think most of my career, if somebody said, where do you want to be in 5 years and whatever that what a nonsense question that is. Most of the time I was very happy in what I was doing. I was passionate about the role that I had. I wanted to see the company do well. I wanted to see opportunities open up in front of me. And if the opportunities were there, I wanted to be given a fair crack at whatever that was. And I've never really had a manager that's invested in me and sat down and said, what skills do you need to have? Because very often pre-sales leaders don't have anybody around them that's going to do that for them because they're led by salespeople. So it doesn't happen. But anyway, as a pre-sales manager, you should have that conversation with your people around what is it that they want to achieve. Because again, that's building up hopefully you're doing it from a position of real sincerity, that you care about somebody and you're not doing it for the going through the motions. But by doing that, it helps somebody understand that you are investing in them. Gives you the opportunity to understand, is there some sort of certification that they would like to have? Can you go and is there money available in the company? A lot of companies of a reasonable size have education budgets. Can you tap into that to help somebody get certified in something? As long as you can link it back to the growth of the business, then you can generally find ways of helping somebody get the development that they want. But then equally from a development plan, what skills do you need people to have? Sometimes you have to have a difficult conversation with somebody about, look, you really need, if you've got a portfolio play as a company, you need to have a difficult conversation with somebody who says, look, you can't just be a one-trick pony. You need to learn other technology. Yeah. You've got to have that conversation with somebody. So that development plan is really, really important. And that also leads on to another thing about the whole people development, feedback. Feedback is a human need. Everybody needs to have feedback some way or another. I don't care who it is, however tough they appear to be. they need feedback. Now, some people get that feedback in different ways. They get it from their own personal successes. They can see the success that they're having, and that style of success suits them. If you think about salespeople, at the end of the day, it's closing deals.
That's great. Yeah.
And they can get that self-gratification from that. But most people actually need to understand they're doing a good job. And even when you've got somebody that's not doing a good job, I can almost hand on heart say, every time I've had a difficult conversation with somebody about their performance, they have come back afterward and said, thanks for letting me know, or they've been positive about the experience, because there's hardly anybody gets up and goes to work to do a bad job. You want to go to work and you want to feel that you're doing a good job. And if you're not getting that feedback that you're doing a good job, then it becomes quite tough for you. So feedback is critical for people.
I agree with that. And I think I have faced sometimes some situation of lack of self-awareness. That people would not realize how they are not operating in the right way.
Yep.
And feedback was seen as a threat. So a threat. I think my unlearning was to be more proactive.
Yep.
And the behavior was deviating from the scope, let's say, or the baseline.
Yep.
I think that's important, because people don't realize. And sometimes people can be offended. And that's also why I think you put me on the crucial conversations training, and that was a very useful one. So to be able to communicate in an effective manner,
absolutely,
those type of feedback.
Yeah. And you're spot on, though, and that's, performance. We'll talk about performance reviews as well in a minute. But when it comes to performance is a daily activity. If somebody does something that isn't appropriate, you've got to deal with it straight away. You can't wait 6 months or a year to their performance review and say, back in January, you did this thing that was completely inappropriate. It's not going to work. It's not going to have any impact for that person. And I think the other key thing with feedback is, when it's a difficult conversation, it needs to be scenario based. You've got to give, this is the situation that happened. This is the outcome that you got as a result of it. Are you aware that Joe felt really, really hurt by the way in which you spoke to that person?
Mm-hmm.
Could you see how you could have been that much more effective if you've got to make it a reality,
more specific,
specific and situational based for that person. The other thing about feedback that is so critical, and it's one of the things that I find as a coach I'm doing with people that I coach, I always tell my managers, management is a lonely place.
Oh, yeah.
It's very lonely. And the more senior or the bigger your team, the more lonely it gets. Because particularly for men, and maybe this is being unfair, it's sexist, we're not good at communicating when we're stressed, and when we don't give feedback sometimes very, very easily. We don't tend to open up if you've got problems as a manager, you can't open up to your people that work for you, because you can't share your stress with your team. That's going to be disastrous. You typically don't like to do it to your manager, because you don't want to show that and this is what I mean by men, you typically don't want to show it to your manager because you don't want to demonstrate that you're weak and you can't handle what it is that you're dealing with. And you very often don't necessarily have peers that you want to open up to either, because again, you're competing with them. So leadership can be a very, very lonely place to be. So feedback from people around you is quite important. And without that feedback, you don't necessarily know you're doing a good job or not. You can believe you are, you think you are, you feel like you are, but it still doesn't compensate for positive feedback. And the other thing about moving into leadership and management that a lot of people don't necessarily appreciate is there's no instant gratification particularly in the world of pre-sales, as a pre-sales individual that moves into management, every day you get elements of self-gratification. You go and visit a customer, you know if you've done a good or bad job with that customer. And if
as an IC.
as an
As an
yeah. So you're getting daily gratification. And
yes.
most SEs, if you've done a bad job, that's feedback, and you're going to take that on board. You're going to try and learn, okay, what went wrong with that? I can do better. And even that is still gratification. You're getting, although it's a negative outcome, you're going to learn from it. As you move into management, you don't get that. That daily gratification doesn't come along. So the loneliness gets compounded by the fact that you don't see your own personal successes as you're going through your role. And the more senior you get, the less opportunity it is to see that you're having success with your team. So finding ways to get feedback in a leadership position is actually quite an important thing. And finding an outlet for that is quite an important thing. And that, we've diverted here a little bit, but you talked about the importance of coaches. And that's where I think external coaches can play an enormously powerful role for managers and leaders. You can have a trusted conversation with a coach that you know isn't going to go any further. And it can be as negative or, emotional as you need it to be, you can have with an external coach. And then that coach can, 9 times out of 10, an external coach, well, for me anyway, I mean, I coach from a position of having been there and done it. And a lot of the people I work with, I've been through the pain that they're dealing with. So my experience helps me. But 9 times out of 10, a coach is holding a mirror up. Most people know what the answer is. They just need somebody to bounce it off in a safe environment, talk through the ideas and the scenarios. If I do this, what's going to be the outcome? What about if I do? And somebody can hold a mirror up and say, well, yeah, but think about the impact on that. How's that person going to react to if you do it that way? So I think coaches are almost invaluable. And I think many organizations don't see the benefit of them.
And important question, can you as a manager be the coach of your directs?
Yes, but to a certain level. So you can coach somebody in terms of development, very much so. You should always be looking at how do you coach people. And most of the time when you're giving feedback to people, you are coaching them in some, ideally you're coaching them to improve. So yes, you can coach your own individuals, and you should be doing it as a matter of course.
But there's always a bias with regards to performance management, right? Because you're talking about the safe environment that you described for an external coach. I mean, there's a tension here because your boss is eventually, measuring your performance. So are you able to demonstrate your weaknesses and to your point about maybe men being less good than as a gender to share their emotions or their weaknesses? I think it's a conflict.
I think it is. There's no doubt there is a conflict, and the closer you are in terms of that hierarchical reporting, then that conflict gets stronger. So, but I think again there's an element here where the more compassion you've got for other people, the more that barrier breaks down. So, but it's got to be, the other person has got to genuinely feel that you care about their career and what they're doing. And I think if you actively demonstrate that you're interested in somebody's career and not necessarily what they're doing for you, my view was always, I get great return out of your career while you're working for me. And if I can get a number of years out of you in that stepping stone, that's brilliant. And the more I can help you in that career journey that you're on, the more I'm going to get. The fact that you're going to leave me, that's a reality. And that I have no problem with that, because I know I'm going to get spades of return as a result of helping you to get to where you want to be. And if that's out the company, then I still get spades of return.
That's good. That's a
But
great mindset.
and then
But
if you do that, then you do break down to a
yeah,
degree that hierarchy, but it will always be there. You've got to be realistic. You know, it's the classic when you see an exec come in from out of town and they have what they call a town hall meeting or an open meeting, and I'm going to ask people some questions and I'll get some honest feedback. Bullshit. You're not going to get.
yeah.
You're kidding yourself. I've had managers do that in the past. They'd come over and I want to get some honest feedback from your troops. And then they graph it up at the end and feed it back to the organisation. Yeah, I've been out there to the field, and this is what they're telling me. You're cuckoo land, mate. Absolute cuckoo land.
That's good. I want to double click on what you mentioned earlier on the growth and personal career development. One of the things that I've recognized is, or what I'm asking from my team, is to demonstrate ownership on their own career as well.
Yeah,
that's my ask to them, saying that I want you to ask, I want you to come with a plan, because I will be here to support it. But is that the role of the manager leader to define that plan? It's a joint exercise, and I need to understand where they're coming from and where they want to go. Because I mean, if an SE approach you and say, "Hey, I want to be a PM," there you go. You know what they want, so you can help them grow. But if they say, "I'm happy, I'm doing my job," what can you do?
well, I don't think you necessarily. I mean, okay, so a couple of things in there. Somebody's career plan is theirs.
Yeah.
I think you do, as a manager, you have a joint responsibility in understanding what their plan is, if they've got a plan. As I said earlier, there are elements of somebody's development plan that are your responsibility.
Yes.
In that,
okay.
If you as a company buy a new piece of technology and you've got to sell it, then your people have got to learn it, and you should put that into somebody's development plan in order to do that. That's part of their job. So
Great.
that needs to go in there from a leadership point of view. But when it comes to somebody's career, they own that, and you should support them to get to where they want to get to in their career. And in a lot of cases, using your example, if somebody wants to be a PM, there's a lot of things you as a pre-sales leader can do to coach them and develop them as to what they probably should be doing in their role that will help them make that transition into a PM. If they don't have a plan, and I'm such an individual that never had a plan, and that's fine. I don't think you need to force somebody to have a career plan for the sake of having a career plan. Then it becomes artificial and false. If they don't want to, and they may not want to share it with you, and that's perfectly fine. If they don't have that in their mindset as to that's what they want to do, then absolutely fine. I don't see that as a negative. You know, in some respects, I had some people that have worked for me who've been in pre-sales all of their life as an individual contributor. They're very successful and very happy. And you know what? They are great individuals to have in your team, because they make the foundation and the support. They've got so much knowledge in their heads over their career. You know, they're great coaches for other people around them. They're brilliant individuals. And if they don't want to progress, why should we force somebody to progress if that's not in their makeup? Some people have a great work-life balance, and what really motivates them is what they do outside of work.
Yeah.
And they come to work to earn money to do what they really want to do outside of work, and good on them for it. You know, so I don't think you should force somebody to do something but you should be there to support their career if they want it. And as you said earlier, you know, their career plan is there. Yes. They own that.
Yeah. Okay. I think I totally agree with you. Maybe I realized that a bit late, or as in recently, and it goes back probably to EQ, where I am someone which is who is very driven,
Yeah.
who wants to progress, and I've seen in the way I communicated to my team, I wanted to be super transparent and to inspire people to go to the next level. And what I didn't realize when we had that discussion, that some of the people were just fine
Yeah.
to be at their level, and they were super happy. And so
Unbeknown, you've actually applied pressure onto them to move them into an
yeah,
area where they're not happy.
yeah. So I had to change, and I think I still need to change my language with regards to that. Whereas, I mean, it's perfectly fine if you are happy in your job and you want to stay at the same level, because we need people anyway to do that type of role. So, I think it was a strong bias on my side, and I'm glad that that the team was feel safe enough to push me back on this.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's a good.
and
Yeah.
yeah,
Of course, the only thing you have to be a little bit careful about there is that you get the potential extreme of some people who are comfortable in their role, but their role is evolving and they're not evolving. And then it starts to move into a different conversation.
agree.
And it might be a good moment while we're on the performance development to look at the negative aspects
Of leadership. Yeah.
Where there's multiple reasons why you should be doing people development. And I had a very, very harsh awakening to this, in that while things are going along lovely and everybody's happy and you're rewarding people and everything's going well, it's great. But when you're asked to make some decisions that are tough decisions, then it's a different matter altogether. And you should always be ready for those tough decisions. You never know when you're going to go through a merger, for example, and you may be or an acquisition. Exactly.
You could be acquired.
Yeah, absolutely. And that can happen at any moment. You need to be ready for that. And you need to be ready to position your people in some form of matrix that is going to come down to you. And if you've not got any performance management stuff in place where you can demonstrate factually the capabilities and ability of your people, you can't protect them. And we went through a merger at one point and we didn't have any of this material. And I had to make decisions as to, okay, who's going to be the new leader in this organization? And you're making it emotionally. And that's a horrible place to be when you are making tough decisions about people's careers, where you're having to make it emotionally based on a little bit of knowledge you've got about somebody. And then you've got the extreme where you're having to make a riff. And for me, you're always going to be in that situation where somebody's just got married and they've moved into a new home and they've got a baby on
mortgaged. Yeah.
And now suddenly you're going to have to make somebody redundant. Do you make that person redundant that's got life circumstances that are impactful, or do you make the person redundant that is your superstar? Because you don't want to make the person redundant that's got a life situation. You got to be able to take yourself out of that emotional situation and remember, number one responsibility is you're running a business. And much as it is very painful and a horrible thing to have to do, you need to make the decisions as to which people are going to stay with you based on ability and, the right on the bus. And so if you haven't got the basics of performance management, people development, all of those things at your fingertips, you're not in a position to make those tough decisions where you can actually objectively justify your decisions. And I think that then it comes into two elements there. One, certainly for me, who is a very, very much a people person, if I'm going to make somebody redundant, I really want to know that I'm making the right choice as making that person redundant. And I want to make it objectively as to why I'm making that person redundant. So I need it for my own satisfaction. As tough as that's going to be to have that conversation, I'm going to have that conversation based on the right objective material. And you can only do that if you've been doing performance management. You can't suddenly turn on, say, right, I'm going to do a skills matrix now of everybody, and I'm going to assess them, and now I'm going to make my choice based on that because I'm doing it immediately. If you've got a small team, you can probably do that. But if you've got 300 people and you're the only one, one that's going to be making this decision because the organization doesn't let you pass this down to your organization because they don't want it known yet. So, you're going through the early phases of a merger and you've got to make 10% cut and you're the only one that knows it. Your managers don't know it. You better have that information at your disposal because you ain't going to know all those people in your organization. So I'm not saying for a moment that's the reason you put performance management in place. You put performance management in place for all the good reasons that you do it, to develop people, to bring people on, to give them a career. But when the shit hits the fan, you better have it at your disposal as well because you need it. Now, the other element of it, for me, it's I need to be able to be confident I'm making the right decision. You need to be able to make the decision that you're going to be able to support in court. Because if you're going to make somebody redundant because you're friends with them and they've just taken on a massive mortgage, but you're going to let the guy go that actually is the only person in the organization with a unique skill that you need, and you're going to make that person redundant, you better be able to stand up in court and defend that. So again, we're in a world where you must be able to legally defend your decisions that you're making to get rid of somebody. So you must have all that material at your disposal. And the same is true for, if you're going to make, people will always tell you it's impossible to fire somebody in France or fire somebody in Germany. No, it's not. If you've got good quality performance management, development plans in place, you can, if somebody's not performing, it's your duty to deal with it because you're running a business. And you've also got to think about the impact it has on everybody else in the team, particularly when you're talking about any environment where teamwork is critical. If somebody's not pulling their weight, eventually that starts to have a negative impact on their attitude towards you as well. You're not dealing with the fact that somebody isn't performing. So you need to be able to get on with it. And it's important for the whole ecosystem that you're dealing with it. So that RIF process or the difficult conversation that somebody isn't performing, it's all part of your people development program. It's the negative element of it, but it's all part of that. You must have that in place, that foundation in place for the well-being of your team. And if you've got it, you're ready. And then, of course, you got the positive element of it as well, where you need to be ready. In our world, stock options or RSUs is often when the climate is right. Unfortunately, we've had a couple of years where it's not so clever, but very often as a leader, you'll be told, okay, there's 5,000 RSUs you can share across your team. Well, you need to share it. It's not good to peanut butter rewards where everybody, you got 5 people, you got 5,000 shares, right? Okay, everybody gets 1,000. That's not good. You're not rewarding people that actually you should shine a light on. It should.
So RSUs are restricted stock units. So basically, you are giving options to get stock.
Future stock in the company. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I think you and I, we discussed that during when we met last week. And I want to go back to your stick diagram. Is that how you call it? Stick man. Where basically you need to build relationships, with your peers, with your stakeholders, and also you need to manage up, as in you need to deliver to the business, and that gives you the level of trust that you can make the right decisions. And I want to talk about when you can push back or when you can change the narrative with regards to the RIF. As in, I understand that you want to make some savings. let me find other ways to do it. Or
yeah. Well, first of all, if you're going to embark on that conversation, you've got to do it from a point of data and actual information.
It has to be data driven. Yeah,
and you've got to understand as well what the driver for the riff may be, and is it in your sphere of control to be able to have that conversation? Because sometimes things like span of control, metrics, headcount statistics, they play a part. These consultancy firms like PwC and Accenture, etc., that get involved in mergers and acquisitions. They come along with their spreadsheets and metrics, and they can be very hard for you to battle against, particularly if you're lower down in the organization where you're not going to be able to influence greatly. And there are many battles that go on when you're doing an M&A that happen, that leaders, execs have to choose which battles they're going to fight. So understanding the playing field is a critical element of it. And very often, I would say, you don't have control over the parameters that are given to you. What you might have control over is, before I go there, the other challenge that you often have in organizations is that in the world of IT organizations, you very often don't actually have budget control. You don't have a P&L. You may have an operating margin that you're working in, but typically that won't be, the pre-sales leader won't have that. It'll be the sales leader or the AVP will have that at their control. And if you've got a good relationship with that person, then you may be able to work with them and influence that, etc. But very often, if you don't have that and you don't have P&L, the company isn't in that realm where they give out P&L down through the organization. And very often it doesn't exist other than in the boardroom for a lot of IT organizations. So your flexibility in that regard is very, very limited. And the other element, of course, is that largely speaking, IT is all about headcount. The cost in a company is the vast majority of it is headcount. And the only way you're going to make operating savings is to reduce your headcount. Where you may have more control is where you make that reduction in your headcount. And if you have got inroads into your financial counterpart, the sales ops guy or the finance ops guy for your region, you may be able to find out whether there is a value on the dollar saving that you're expected to make. And then you may be able to influence some of your decisions, because staff in some parts of the world are more expensive than others. You may be able to make a choice of, if I was to cut an expensive manager and reorganize a little bit, I might be able to achieve the financial savings the company wants without actually having to necessarily make so many headcounts redundant. So you got to try and understand what the parameters you're working to are. And as I say, very often you don't have much control over those parameters.
But if you don't have those relationships established with your peers, with your finance op, with everyone, with the area VP, as you said, or that's already
water. Yeah. Now, where you can, again, if you have very often, unfortunately, these things are done in a vacuum, and they're done so fast that it gives you very limited control. I did in one organization, significant size organization, put a plan forward over multiple years where I would increase the efficiency of the pre-sales organization such that I could bring down the headcount ratios, and bought myself time on the operating cost savings by saying that I could bring it down to a lower level. I could invest in a shared services team that is a lower cost model, and I could therefore bring down the overall operating cost of my function by doing that. But you don't often get the time to be able to make that proposal. So your hands are very often tied in these circumstances. And as you say, the relationships that you've got with particularly your sales counterpart. Sometimes pre-sales people report up through a pre-sales chain right up to high level. Irrespective of your reporting line, the person that matters the most to you is your sales counterpart, and having a good relationship there. And I've known several sales leaders who will sacrifice a sales head to protect the pre-sales heads because it's more important. They recognize the importance of maintaining that knowledge and that intellectual capability and that capacity in order for them to actually hit their revenue number.
It's often more difficult to hire as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But, that's a very, I'd say it's uncommon, and B, it's very forward thinking of that individual because, again, like pre-sales people, salespeople aren't given much in the way of support and coaching and development. And 9 times out of 10, a company's revenue number is a formula. If you've got $5 million to hit or $50 million to hit, and your average quota is $5 million, then you need 10 salespeople to hit that $50 million. So there's your head count. And you're going to get a SE ratio, anything from, I don't know, depending on the technology, from 0.4 to 1.2, anything in that realm. So now you've got 10 head sales heads. Now that tells you how many pre-sales people you've got. Go knock yourself out. There's your metrics. They're done.
Yeah.
and that's it. You don't have a lot more control over the life than that. But it does depend on the organisation and the way in which they build their capacity plans and their operating cost models, etc.
So let's go back to the shit hits the fan. You have your lists. You have to make the hard decision. How do you help them? How do you? What's the best way to process? Because sometimes, even if they may not be the best in your team, and you need to let them go, but they have been working well.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
how do you let them go?
Yep. Well, so just before we go on to that, there's another exercise that I think is a really valuable exercise that you should always, and one of the leaders that I hugely respected that actually gave me the opportunity to move into leadership. She was a sales leader in actual fact. And one of the things that she believed in was what she called a lifeboat exercise. Mm-hmm. And again, you should always have your lifeboat to your hand. Now, the difference between a lifeboat exercise and a performance orientated exercise is that a lifeboat exercise looks at who is critical to you. And it's called a lifeboat exercise because if you think of it, you're on a ship that's sinking and you've got a lifeboat and you've got 10 seats in that lifeboat. Who are you going to give those seats to? So you might decide, I need a lot of muscle that's going to row this boat, and you fill the boat up with muscle. And then you suddenly realize nobody knows how to navigate. And we haven't a clue where we're going. So you suddenly realize, okay, I better get a navigator. Mm-hmm. It turns out that the only person that knows how to navigate is the most difficult person to work with. But you can't run your business without somebody that can navigate. So the benefit of thinking about it from a lifeboat exercise is you start to look at the capabilities of your team rather than the personalities and the career and the skill set that they've got. And you start to realize, okay, now when I go through a riff, if I look at it from both a performance capability and a lifeboat capability, I now know, okay, that guy is a pain in the ass, but I need him because he's the only one with that skill set. So I can't afford to riff that person. So you need to take those both dynamics into equation when you're thinking about what you're doing. Now, it may be that it highlights a flaw in the way you've built your team, in that you're dependent on one individual. That may be one of the outcomes you get as a result of making sure that you've always doing a lifeboat exercise that tells you, okay, I've got the coverage that I need to run my business. But so you should look at it from both of those angles, because there's no point doing a riff and ending up with, you've got a portfolio play as a company, and now you've suddenly only got people that know this one product.
Yeah.
Nobody knows that product because you haven't taken that into equation. And that's what a lifeboat exercise does for you, is it gives you that, makes you think of these things in a slightly different way.
That's great. Thank you for that, for sharing that. I think
now, in terms
useful.
of your original question, there's no easy way to this. And the only way that I have ever learned or know how to do this is you sit down and are honest with people. You open up with, I need you to prepare for a difficult conversation. As you know, the company's going through XYZ situation. I'm sorry to have to inform you that as part of that exercise, now I'm a big believer in taking on the responsibility. If you're the one that's made the decision that you're going to get rid of somebody, step up to the plate and own it. I have made the decision that you're going to be the one that's going. And ideally, you may give a reason if it's very clear.
Mm-hmm.
It helps somebody to understand if you can give them a reason as to why you're making the choice that you are. But you don't want to get drawn into conversations at that point. It's a shit place to be for everybody concerned, especially the person that's being made redundant. But if you get drawn into a conversation on it, you're only going to make it harder for that person. The reality is they're being made redundant. Now, hopefully, and thankfully, touch wood for me, whenever I've had to do it, the company has had a care of their people, and there's been a supported package in place to look after them. Okay, it's never the same as being able to stay in the job that you're in, but at least you're doing the humane thing and trying to look after people. But again, that's not a conversation that you as a manager should ideally be having. That's where HR should step in and take over from you and separate, because while you will always be the guilty party, and as a manager and as a leader, you need to take that on the chin. It is always going to be you that the individual hates, and you're likely to get some pretty unpleasant correspondence from that individual, because they're going to go through the change curve. If people are familiar with the change curve,
yes,
you drop, etc., and they're going to go through denial. They're going to go through anger, and that is going to be at you. Even though the corporation is doing this, you're the one that's made them redundant at the end of the day. So you're going to have to step up and take it on the chin and accept it. It's not pleasant. It's not nice, and you've got to realize that you're doing it. I always got comfort from the point of view of, this is a business. I'm running a business. I hate this aspect of it that we're doing this, but at the end of the day, I've got to run this business the way that I'm being asked to run this business. What you mustn't do as a leader and as a manager is pass the response. I'm being told I've got to make you redundant. That's dreadful.
Yeah.
It's the same with, we talked a little bit about communication. When you've got to communicate to your team something that the company wants to do, as a manager and as a leader, you can't communicate that as, I'm being told that expenses, we're going to have to reduce our expenses. You can't claim for broadband anymore. I don't agree with this, but this is what I'm being told you've got to do. As a manager, you can't do that. you've got to stand up and be representing the company. You can't start passing the responsibility and saying that this isn't, I don't believe in this, because otherwise the whole dynamics of the company starts falling apart.
Agree.
Even
That's why a great leadership principle that we have at Amazon is called disagree, have backbone, disagree, and commit.
Mm-hmm.
So you may, I mean, sometimes you may not be able to disagree, but you have to commit.
Yeah.
And the commit part is the difficult one. It's very difficult, but you have to do it. Otherwise, everything falls apart.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's all the hierarchy of leadership. And frankly, if you don't agree, you've always got a choice.
Agree. I agree with that.
And in all of my career, I've exercised that choice, and it's always been because I haven't agreed with my direct boss. I'm a big believer in you join companies and leave leaders or leave managers. And you make that choice. If you don't like the way something is operating, you either learn to accept it and park it. Because if you stay, that's the worst you can have as an individual that's working for you. Somebody that doesn't like what they're doing but isn't going to do anything about it. I've had people like that, and you think, you're so frustrated for that individual. Why are you making your life? You spend every day coming into work moaning about how bad the product is. If you can't get over it and learn to accept and understand and help improve it, why do you put yourself through this pain all the time? Mm-hmm. Sometimes the nicest thing you can do for somebody is actually have an honest conversation and say, look, I really think you'd be so much happier if you broaden your horizon and look for something new that can get your mojo back, get your enthusiasm and passion back for what you're doing. Because at the moment, I just see somebody that's unhappy.
Agree.
But anyway, that's unfortunately the world we're in now. It's a challenge to have that conversation with somebody without putting yourself into a very difficult legal situation.
Sure, but it's also about only trust. I mean, you need to have those conversations sometimes, and that's important.
You do.
So I want to move on to a better topic, or let's say happier topic, and I want to discuss about coaching, because that's your main activity now, and help me understand what is the different. How is it different from mentoring?
That's a good question.
Or I have a follow-up question, and maybe that would help. How to make the best out of coaching as a coachee?
So I can only tell you how my approach to coaching, and it's probably not conventional. So I like to coach people. Largely, I coach people in the sphere and in the career space that I've been in, and I coach from a point of view of I've had a decent career in that, and I've been fairly successful. And so when I coach, I'm willing to tell as well as hold up a mirror and try and encourage people to understand that this might not only from a point of view of this may have this impact, or if you tried this approach, you may get this. I'm willing to be slightly more prescriptive to people and try and help them take on the experience that I've had. And I'm sure that I'll get a lot of criticism from your podcast viewers. And it comes as well from a point of, I've had help in the past that I've been frustrated with because I'm asking for help and all somebody is doing is holding a mirror up. Holding a mirror up is great when somebody does know in themselves what the answer is. But if you're looking for help from somebody and all they're just giving you consultancy style guidance, tell me what you know about the problem, and I'll tell you what the problem is. That's no use to me. I want help me. Tell me what some of the things I should be doing to help. So I do tend to probably overstep the mark in this, and actually be more prescriptive to people as to how they should look at or how they should go about. And that's why, I'm always, when I start with somebody, I talk about, look, you need this living document. So I work with them to build that living document. That the content of it or the nuggets in it comes from them, but I want them to build that living document. Yeah. Cross-functional influence map. I want you to build that cross-functional influence map because I know that it can be so powerful for you because I've been there and somebody's helped me understand that in the past. And if somebody doesn't like that style of my coaching, then that's perfect. That's not a problem. I'm not concerned about that. If you don't like it, coaching is about a personal thing. You have to have a rapport with the coach that you're working with. And if they don't like my style, then that's absolutely fine. I have no problem in agreeing that this isn't working between us. But I think you need somebody that's going to tell you as much as hold a mirror up. Otherwise, what are you learning from somebody? If you're just going to give them academic textbook stuff on styles of how you can do it, tell me your experiences. I've had the experience of doing this. This is what happened to me. I've done this in 4 or 5 different companies now, and it's been successful in every single one of them. This is the way I've approached it and worked at it. If you don't like what I'm telling you, that's fine. Coaching and mentoring is like giving somebody a Christmas present. I give you this gift. You don't have to like it, and you don't have to wear it. I'll give you a jumper. You don't have to wear it. You've got that choice. But this is my perception of the situation. And now when you're paying somebody to be a coach, and you hope that they're going to be giving you some advice that you're going to want, otherwise you're wasting your money. So I think when you talk about coaching and mentoring, actually, if I think about it, when you mentor somebody, you're more mirror. To me, if you're coaching somebody, you're going to give them practical examples of how to go about doing something that can be different.
That's my understanding also. That's how I differentiate the two practice, I would say. And I think a coach in sport, for example, they would not just hold the mirror. They would say, hey, you have been shitty, and I've been at your place, and I've done this and that. So that's how you can help them. I mean, that's why Deschamps in France for soccer is so great, because he has been a world champion.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. And in a way, and it's where it works better for me when I'm coaching pre-sales people, because especially in those early, the number of EMEA pre-sales managers that I've worked with, where I've talked about all the different facets of pre-sales and the challenges when you do a merger, when you've got an overlay sales organization. That's a classic one. That's that every company builds these bloody overlay sales organizations, specialist product sales, and pre-sales have to deal with it. And the challenges you've got with that, having done it and helped somebody to see what they're going to have to do and the challenges they're going to have if they fight against it. That for me is where I help, and that knowledge I'm sure will have a limited shelf life in terms of the years that I can coach, because the industry will move on, and maybe it will. I don't know. In all the years I've been there, these companies go through the same cycles over and over again. So
how can we hire you for coaching? How do we get in touch with you?
Give me a call at mark.seager at masteringleadershipskills.co.uk.
Okay, so I would share your website and maybe an email address.
Cool. From that, and one of the things that I now have done several times with different managers, and managers have passed me on to other managers, is I've got this kind of an 8-module approach that I have with managers, and we go through that, and it gives them the foundation and learning and the tools, if you like, that they can use to get better. And we go through all sorts of scenarios and examples that I've had in that. And two of the modules are around MBTI. So I do an MBTI session with somebody so that they can start to understand themselves. And again, you see, I coach MBTI in a different way to academics as well, because when I was last in work, I developed this what I refer to as the EQSE, the Emotional Intelligent SE. So I used Myers-Briggs on my pre-sales people so that I could use examples of, if you're sat in front of a CTO or a CIO, you've got an audience of different people. These are the things to look out for that are part of somebody's personality or preference style, as it were. Mm-hmm. So I make it real for people as to, okay, well, this is what it means to you, rather than go through an academic exercise around MBTI.
That's good.
It's really about, this is what you'll see when you go through it, and this is what you can use, how you can use it to be more impactful.
Thank you. So I think I'm following the same spirits, I would say, or framework, because with this podcast, I want to hear from leaders, actual leaders who have been in the job, and they can share practical examples of how they have done it and how they practice leadership. So thank you for everything that you have shared today. It was a lot, and sorry it took that long, but it was so interesting.
Not structured either, from my point of view. But,
no, it's okay. It's a conversation, so it's. I think it's good. A final question on my side: what other leaders should I have a conversation with? Would you have someone to recommend?
I'd always point to a chap called Greg Cooper. He's worked for me now 3 times, I believe, and I think he's a great people leader. He's very, very in touch with his team, more so than I am as well. So I think he's a great leader. The other person, oh God, my memory for names is absolutely dire. What's her name? That's embarrassing. Paloma is her Christian name. I just can't remember her surname. Damn it. I'll look it up for you and send it.
No worries at all.
Send it on to you. What's nice about Paloma is that she's been successful in a world dominated by men, and she's I've lost it.
No worries. We can. I will add that to the description of the episode. So no problem at all. But yeah, I would love to specifically women with a lot of experience. I think that would be super beneficial.
Yeah. She's been very successful. She works at Service Now.
Oh, yeah.
She's a pre-sales leader there. She was a pre-sales leader at Semantic as well, funnily enough. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mark. It was super inspiring. A lot of great content. I think it's a masterclass even. So
I don't know about that. Just ramblings of somebody that's had an enjoyable career in pre-sales, and been very lucky.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
You stayed until the end. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Paid Forward Society. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share it with at least 2 people who would benefit from this discussion. Your support helps me reach more people and make a greater impact. You can also help me get discovered by leaving a 5-star rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform. I appreciate your support and look forward to continuing this journey with you. Bye.